I have complex trauma and multiple types of complex trauma. So, my list of things that I'm trying to work on in therapy is pretty long. There are a whole bunch of different topics that repeatedly bring up in therapy. And even though I have this huge list of things that I actively am trying to improve and that I specifically bring up in therapy, I still sometimes find that I have improved or changed or grown on things that weren't on that list and that I haven't directly addressed in therapy. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really neat that that's just neat that um, sometimes healing can kind of have this, I don't know what like the positive version of collateral damage would be, but it kind of has this positive snowball effect sometimes, and that's really cool. But I wanted to share a specific example of something that I haven't specifically addressed in therapy, that wasn't on my list of things to heal, but that I realized today, hey, I have changed in this way, and I feel good about that. And that is essentially how I manage other people's emotions, or how I don't manage them anymore. Now, that's got to be an overstatement. I still definitely struggle with trying to manage other people's emotions, but the intensity or the frequency of it has gotten so much better. And I have actively worked on trying to feel less responsible for like my mom's emotions, for example, and kind of like the wider family dynamic. But I haven't tried to address like people in general, like my friends, and that's the area that I noticed improvement on today. One of my pretty long term friends at this point was having a really rough day today, and I encouraged them to vent to me, and they did. And I saw a side of them emotionally that I had seen before several times, but it's pretty rare. I would say I maybe see this side of them twice a year or so. So, not very often at all. This is somebody I talk to regularly. And I, I don't want to I don't want to diagnose them, but at the same time, for the sake of convenience, I would say this version of them that I'm referencing is a really triggered version of them. And um, and the improvement that I noticed was today I didn't feel nearly as triggered by seeing them in their raw triggered state as I would have in the past. What was particularly difficult for me about seeing them triggered in the past was that when they are very triggered, they will really dig their heels in to whatever their like emotional belief that was triggered is. So this isn't my actual example, like this isn't one that my friend has come to me with, but just for the sake of example, let's say the core belief was nobody likes me. And they would tell me what has happened to them that has led them to feeling this way. So in this example, it would be somebody treated them in a way that made them think this person can't like me or doesn't like me as much as I thought they did, right? And so now they're triggered and they generalize that into because this person hurt me, now I'm doubting if anybody has ever really liked me. And in the past, I would respond to that by trying to counter it. By, so in this case, saying, well, I like you, and I know you have this friend and that friend, and maybe you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a spouse or whoever, a coworker, a neighbor. I know that these 17 people like you. And I did that because it feels very logical. And so to me, it was like, well, if I can kind of hand them a little proof that their emotion that they're feeling doesn't quite line up with logical reality, well, then that might help them feel better, to feel like people do like them, even though they're feeling like they don't. And that never ever worked on this friend. They would always dig their heels in. So if I were to say, I know that you have this girlfriend and she clearly adores you, then my friend might respond, they like these 5 things that I do for them. They like these 2 hobbies that we have in common. But it's just a matter of time until they decide they don't like me either. And again, this is a fake example, but it would always kind of be like that. They would have this really vague, generalized belief that they would hand me. I would try to counter it with logic. They would dig their heels in. No matter how much they would have to twist things to defend their triggered belief, they would always find some way to do it. They would never get to a place of hearing the logic whatsoever. And they also would never kind of give in or stop digging their heels in. And for me, I definitely have plenty of experience with being triggered, having an emotion, sharing that emotion or that belief with somebody. They counter it with logic. I hear their logic, but it doesn't feel true to me. So using the same example, I still feel like nobody likes me, but I wouldn't dig in and try to just keep convincing that person that nobody likes me. I would at some point feel like, well, it's burdensome of me to keep arguing with this person, so I'm just going to kind of let it go. And I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, of course people like me. Like, if that's not true, I'm not going to lie. If that's not truly how I feel. But I would let it go in the sense of saying, like, I appreciate you saying that or something. And this friend would never do that. And so I would just really get in a tizzy of like, I have to get through to them and they're not hearing me. And I would kind of get a little frantic and just feel really hopeless and helpless and like a bad friend. And it would be like all I could think about. And when this happened today, I was somewhat emotionally impacted. I feel bummed for this friend. I wish that I could make them feel better. But when they shared their triggered belief with me, I didn't try to counter it with logic. I just validated how they're feeling, how the experience they had led them to being triggered, and why that sucks. And to be honest, part of this feels a little wrong to me. Like, part of me still really, really wants to show them a logic, but I know that they wouldn't be able to hear that. And I'm in a place now where I know it's not my job to try to fix their trauma beliefs. And I also am in a place where I know that saying like, gosh, you're like really feeling like that is true and you were really hurt by what happened, that isn't the same thing as me saying that, yes, you are factually correct in how you are feeling. Again, going with the same example, I can say, it really sucks that you're feeling like nobody likes you or that they don't like you as much as you thought they did, and that you're now worried if anybody likes you as much as you think they do. And that isn't me saying, oh, you're right, nobody does like you. But I used to think that it did. So I didn't used to think that I could just validate that and not counter it. But the way I handled it today kept it from going down that road of having to keep trying to convince them of my logic. And more than that, though, I just didn't get into this tizzy of feeling like it's my job to convince them. I was able to sit with having some sadness for them that they're feeling this, but not feeling like it's my job to fix this for them. Like, I think I've gotten to a place where I have at least largely really internalized that my job is to listen and try to be supportive. It's not to fix.